I thought I would tell my first encounter with Srila Prabhupada also. It seems that even though I had a lot of opportunity to see Srila Prabhupada being here in Los Angeles, had the opportunity to record him many times, it always seems like a blur, but the first time that I met Srila Prabhupada is still very, very clear in my mind. I had actually, my first encounter with Srila Prabhupada was the Happening LP album, appropriately so for me. And I'd actually started chanting Hare Krishna listening to Srila Prabhupada's record that he'd made in New York, I think about 1967 or 66. So I met Upendra in Seattle and started coming to the temple. They were chanting Hare Krishna like I was. And Upendra had encouraged me to write to Srila Prabhupada. He said, you have to establish a relationship with your guru and that you should write him. And he said also, he's very, very, if you give him a donation for his book fund, it's very dear to him. So I was working at a television station in Seattle and visiting the temple. So I started writing little short letters to Srila Prabhupada, sending $50, $100, like that. And then finally, Rath Yatra Festival arrived in summer of 1969, so I traveled down and saw Srila Prabhupada for the first time giving a lecture at the storefront there in the Haight-Ashbury district just before Rath Yatra. Then the Rath Yatra Festival itself, there was a one-chariot festival, and Prabhupada gloriously sat there on the Rath cart, and we could see him. It was a very long festival, and ended up in the Family Dog Auditorium. So I'd seen Srila Prabhupada, and I had a little more time, so I drove Rabati Nandan and a few devotees here down to Los Angeles. And getting here to Los Angeles, the very second day they said, since you're new, you can get to go on a walk. At that time, most everybody had lots of associations, so the new bhaktas, like myself, Bhakta Carl, who had a shaved head I've had a shaved head for about 7 days. I could barely tie my dhoti without it falling off, and I was now going to go on a walk with Srila Prabhupada. I was now about to meet him face to face, and I was petrified, literally horrified, petrified. You know, in all my lurking and studying and trying to find out spiritual life, I'd read a lot of encounters, the Zen master encounters. That's what I was kind of projecting into my mind what was about to happen. I was going to get grilled on the Bhagavad-gita. I was going to be asked questions, and I was going to make a fool of myself. So they took me over to Prabhupada's house where he was staying. It was close by to the La Cienega Temple, and they brought me in and sat me down, and I was waiting for Srila Prabhupada, and mortified. And then he came in, and he sat down, and his servant said, oh, this is Bhakta Carl. He's the devotee from Seattle who's been giving you the donations to your book fund. And Prabhupada looked at me and he smiled and he thanked me. And it completely, I was so put at ease. I was so, I felt, oh, I am truly in front of a real spiritual master who's so humble. He has no false ego. He's so full of love with Krishna that he's thanking a mere mortal person like me for giving a few dollars to his book fund. And I knew at that very moment that I was truly in the presence of a pure devotee, because he just dispelled whatever fear and projected ideas that I had. I immediately felt I was in the presence of a truly pure devotee. About 1974, 75, I made a record called Gopinath. engaged a few devotees. We went to a recording studio and we made a recording of Gopinath. And Prabhupada came to LA, and Karandar was here, and he wanted to play the record for Srila Prabhupada, and he invited me up to the room to play the record for Srila Prabhupada. And I was quite excited. And so we went up to the room, and Prabhupada listened to the record. Do you remember Agni Dev sang it? Maybe some of you recall it. But it was Agni Dev and all devotee musicians. And Prabhupada was listening to the record, and when it was all done, he was, yes, that was very nice. And I don't recall whether he brought it up or whether Karandar brought it up, but it was something to the effect of, what are we going to do with this? You know, what do you plan to do with this record? And I think it was Karandar kind of trying to maybe see if Prabhupada would agree with it, but the idea was we were going to maybe try to use it on Sankirtan, the record. Maybe we would distribute the record and instead of incense or something like that. And Prabhupada, he thought for a minute. I remember he kind of closed his eyes and bobbed his head. And then he responded, and he said, well, that would be okay as long as it doesn't decrease my book distribution. And he pinched his finger like this. As long as it doesn't decrease my book distribution by this much. And now, I was sort of sitting off to the side, so I got it right away. But Karandar kind of went, what Prabhupada? What did you say? So he emphasized it again, twice. As long as it doesn't decrease my book distribution by even this much. So, yes, sure, yes, yes, Srila Prabhupada was the answer. And when we left the room, it was kind of an unspoken thing between Karandar and I. We never ever, we never dared bring up that subject again. But it was interesting because Prabhupada could see into the future, because later we did have so much trouble with records destroying the purity of the Sankirtan, and because of our lack of purity. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu